We all want to make money. Everybody talks about the 7 figures or the 8 figures or the exits and all this stuff. What really drives us, it's the impact. We would do it whether we got paid or not.
Tell me what you do. I mean, I don't want to say pitch me, but kind of pitch me. Like, tell me what you do.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. No, it's so like kind of our tagline is we help people build lifestyle and financial freedom investing in vacation homes, right? And so what we do is we really want to take somebody that is not a full-time investor. And if you've invested in real estate or you've ever been involved in an investment, there's a lot of moving parts no matter what vehicle you're in. And vacation rentals are no different, right? And so we want to take somebody and lay out a process. There's really 3 main phases to ownership of any sort of an asset, but particularly vacation rentals. And you've got that acquisition phase that is intimidating. And you have to understand markets and property types and how to run income projections. And you have to figure out like all these nightly rates that are changing, seasonalities and occupancy. So you take them through and really give somebody a blueprint to follow through that acquisition phase. Well, just like we were talking about before, right? Trainers and think people are out there doing some of the same things that we do, but the things that make us unique, we deliver a different experience. They've got our personality, and that personality doesn't mean that it's a fit for everybody, right? And so we take that same approach to that setup and management phase. First, the setup phase of taking a property and making it more than this sterile model home looking property, and teaching people how do you stand out in a crowded marketplace. And well, you do that by being unique, right? If you're just going to be a commodity, you're competing on price alone. And so we teach people that there's more to competing in standing out than price alone. And then also, like most of our clients, Jeff, they're not looking for a side hustle. Our clients, the people that we help, they're buying real estate. They're buying second homes. They have enough disposable income and have built up enough, savings or whatever that looks like to buy something else. And they're busy, right? They're busy professionals. They've got extra money. They're not looking to do this themselves. And so we really have to help them figure out how to do it. How do you own a home across the country and have the management set up? And it's not as easy as just hiring a management company. And so we take them through that process, and then ultimately the marketing phase. And we teach them a lot of the things that we do and that on paid advertising. Very, very few people that own a vacation home understand paid advertising. Right. They don't understand how to, if somebody thinks about going and visiting Daytona Beach, Florida, I know how to get in their feed and be in front of them. You do too, right? But the average person doesn't know how to do that. We know it happens. We know that if we think about something, Facebook and Google and everybody else knows about it, but we don't know how to do it. So we take them through this entire phase, the acquisition phase, the setup phase, and the management phase, and then the marketing phase. But really what's most important, and what I feel like I'm most proud of is we don't try to talk somebody into getting into this game. We like to help the people that are really committed already. I tell people, if you're committed to it, then we can help you with a process to follow. We can help you become successful in it. But there's so many ways to get a seat at the table in real estate. It's a huge ocean, right? There's so many lanes that are great. I'm a real estate junkie. I love real estate personally. And vacation rentals have pros and cons just like everything else. This just happens to be this asset class that we love because we can make money with it. But the thing that I really love the most about it is there's this personal use aspect to it, right? Yeah. We talked about this time. And so I can now, and I don't know, there's so many more better people on your show, Jeff, that articulate things so much better than I do. And so forgive me for my articulation of stuff, but we have this like need to go. There's reasons why people buy $200,000 wakeboard boats. There's reasons why we go buy, all these fun things that just depreciate in value. Because of the memories, because of the time we spend, because of the experiences we have with them. And that's one of the things I love the most about the vacation rental game is we can go make some pretty, conservative and really good investments and have this investment side of it kind of box checked and still fulfill that need of wanting to buy something that I can go having this experience with. And that's why I call them lifestyle assets, right? Because there's this lifestyle upgrade. And But, when you say, kind of sell me on it, that's one thing that we don't ever really try to do. We try to, the way we sell you on it is, like you said, we have a conversation. We see if you feel like you resonate with our view of the world. And if you do, most of the time people are like, hey, Shawn, there's not a lot of people that talk about buying a property. It's boring. It's the fundamentals are boring, right?
Right.
Going through that acquisition phase, it's not something that's fun, but talking about the end game, the marketing piece and how you make money with it and how to do that, that's fun. So a lot of people talk about that last piece of the puzzle, and that's not, what are you going to do if you don't figure out the whole foundation in the first place?
And here's the thing, man, like when you get into this entrepreneurial world, I think that for people who aren't in our world, right? Maybe they have the 9 to 5 kind of more cookie cutter type job, and they go on Instagram periodically, or they see these things pop up on YouTube, and it seems like this weird outlier, fringe, almost like skeptical, even potentially scammy thing out there. Like there are these people that live this life. But the reality is, as I've delved into it, there's millions of us.
Yeah.
It's not a weird thing. There's millions of, I've done 150 episodes I started this show a year ago. I could do this for 1,000 years and never run out of really successful, really dynamic, really interesting and cool entrepreneurs to interview on the show. It's kind of crazy.
And that's such an amazing point that, so many, and I'm sure people have asked you this, but people are always like, why, or they comment on our ads, right? We're building a business and we're putting ourselves out there and helping people do these certain things, right? We're becoming these coaches in our own lives and in our own world. And people are like, oh, if they did it, they would never share it. You're never going to unlock the keys to the kingdom and blah, 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 blah. And it's such a, that is such the biggest bunch of bullshit I've ever heard. And just what you even said, like you could talk to so many people that are just making it happen and bringing the energy and doing things all day, every day. And it's so fun that now in today's world, right? I mean, I'm old enough I was a cassette tape guy. In fact, Teresa and I were talking about making mixed tapes for each other back in the day. My wife, Teresa, because we've been together since we were 15. But I mean, now we've got all this information at our fingertips, and we have so many amazing lessons to be learned from all these people, which is so fun. And this journey is exactly that. A lot of times with Instagram and social media and everything else, right? You see the 7 figures in less than a year, and you sold their company for hundreds of millions or a billion or whatever it is. You see that. And now we're starting to be able to, like on platforms like this and others, we're seeing and being able to hear the backstory, the lead up, right? The 10 years to an overnight success.
Right.
And that's part of the fun of it is the journey. It's why guys don't stop. It's why we get to one level and then we're going to the next, because we realize that the fulfillment comes in the journey, and we can learn so much from that. And there's so many people out there making it happen and doing it. It's just so much fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you're right. Like even like in the last month, I think I can think of at least 2 off the top of my head. I had a guy on the show named Bobby Castro, sold his company for $1 billion. I had Grant Cardone on the show, who's got over $2 billion in real estate now. And then I had Brandon Dawson, who's Grant Cardone's partner, that has a multi-billion-dollar business equity portfolio that they're building. Like, how are you going to go get access to these people?
Yeah.
What you used to have to pay to be able to step inside the mind of a person like that. And now it's out there for free, and people are skeptical of it. And I think it's ironic. It hit me when you were saying that about how people say, oh, well, if you're so successful, you would never tell people how to do it, or you would never even sell training on how to do it. It's like, no, there is an environment where if somebody cracks the code on success, they're not going to share it with you. And that's called your job.
Right.
Because they're gunning for the promotion and they don't want you to compete for the promotion.
Yeah.
But the entrepreneurs, we go around creating blue oceans. Like, we don't slaughter each other in the water. We just create new oceans and go conquer them. Or like, it's actually kind of sad. And I think it speaks a lot to how we're educated and how we're raised to think that if somebody's successful, they're going to hurt themselves by sharing it. When I believe you help yourself by sharing it.
100%.
In my experience.
100%. Couldn't agree more. I mean, it's just, I mean, anytime you're around a high producer, I've never personally, and maybe they're out there and I'm sure they're out there, but I've never personally been around a high producer and a top producer that doesn't want to help you, that doesn't want to share what they're doing. Because what you realize, like I had somebody was telling me the other day, they're like, hey man, somebody's gonna knock you off. You've got to start doing this and this and this to protect what you're doing and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, if they want to knock me off, they can knock me off. We've been doing this for a long time. You know what they can't knock off, Jeff, and they can't knock it off from me or from you, is they can't knock us off. And
Right.
when I started to learn that, and when I started to learn that just putting, instead of trying to copy what other people are doing, there's nothing new under the sun. We all try to model and learn and take these pieces of information, but we have to make it, us and our own. And I think high producers realize that, and they're like, that's never going to hurt me. The more I can help somebody, there's just this growth mindset out that it's just like, man, it's just going to keep going. And it's really a fun thing to be around when you start to expose yourself to that. And so if you're out there listening and you're doubting and thinking and you're skeptical and everything else, just take that back a notch and allow yourself to just absorb some of the stuff out there and see what happens. Just absorb it without the skepticism. And there's some stuff out there that you probably might not be the best opportunity or idea for you, but guess what? I've done a million of those and you might have too. And we learn along the way. Every one of those mistakes we learn from. And so, take that guard down just a tad and allow yourself to absorb that information, good or bad. You're going to learn something from it.
Yeah, I failed. I say failed based on the conventional definition of failure, which is to do a thing that doesn't work out the way you planned. I failed a solid 10 times in my 20s before I ever got something to click. But actually, I just got off of another interview with a gal, and she said something great. She said, I have redefined the word failure to mean to do something that both does not succeed and from which I do not learn. Yeah. That's what failure would be if it doesn't succeed and I didn't learn.
Yes.
Thus, she's like, it's actually impossible for me to fail now because I can't not succeed without learning something.
Yeah. Love it too, right? It's so true. There's so much truth to that. I mean, some of the biggest failures, to the outside world, the biggest failures that I've had, were some of my biggest learning experiences. And I could never be where I'm at today had I not gone through that roadblock.
Yeah. And not only that, sometimes a failure, and at least in my case, that's what you need to light a fire under your ass.
Right.
They're like, oh, you're not making it work. Maybe it's because the hole you're in isn't deep enough.
Right.
Or maybe it's because the house around you isn't fully consumed with flames yet.
Right.
So let's up the ante. Let's really ratchet up the stress and see what you're capable of. And then I'm like, oh, okay, well, now I have a way shittier situation to dig out of. So let me show you what I can do. Right. I mean, I needed that sometimes.
Why do we hear so many success stories, the rags to riches, and their backs against the wall and they're down to their last dollar, and and then that's when they rose from the ashes. I mean, it's over and over and over. We hear those stories, right? It's that concept of good to great, right?
Yeah.
When things are comfortable, when things are good, you're not pushing yourself sometimes. We're good. We're comfortable.
We're good.
When our back's against the wall and we don't know what the hell to do, and we're scraping everywhere we can, that lights a fire. You're exactly right. And that's not a coincidence that we hear those stories so many times.
Yeah. And I mean, if you go listen to, like I said, I think this is episode number 140, 150, something like that of the show. If you go listen to, and the reason I'm looking over here is because I always look up whenever I seize on a word, very often I have to look up the origin of the word. Yeah. So I'm actually looking up the origin of the word good over here. Cause like you were saying, good actually isn't that good.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'll let you know if I find anything, but that's why I'm like seeming distracted. But no, what I was going to say is if 140, 150 episodes into this show, I can maybe count on one hand the number of people that I've had on that didn't have a story of like smashing up against the rocks.
Yeah.
And having to bounce back.
Right.
It's like, it's almost a requirement for
It
success.
is. It totally is. It's like this rite of passage for some
Yeah.
reason. And, we had the same thing, and it's like you go through that and you learn so much from it to be able to come out on the other side so much better all the way around.
So unfortunately, the word good actually just basically means good. It's not that
Yeah.
interesting. Like,
Yeah.
so there's some words that it's so interesting. Like the word nice. I learned this the other day. If you look up the word nice, if you type in nice etymology, it actually, even just a couple hundred years ago, it basically meant dumb.
Really.
Like if you're nice, it meant you're dumb. It actually meant like you like had a handicap or an impediment or something. And so like
But,
it was,
but you know what? It's interesting in itself that it just means good, right? Like it's kind of
yeah,
blah, right?
yeah, yeah.
Good that's not. We want to be great. I don't want to be good.
It's
But
not even
good,
interesting enough to have like an interesting origin. It just,
yeah,
ugh.
and it's just kind of there, but it's there too to where it's not bad either. And
Right,
so it's kind of like purgatory. You're just kind of there.
right. And that you're right. That's the lure, is that
Yeah,
it is good. It's
yeah,
good.
yeah,
But good is the enemy of great, like they say.
yeah.
So okay. Speaking of the journey, let's dig into yours. You started, I saw in your bio, you became an entrepreneur at 9 years old.
Yeah, I was just one of those. I came from a family, not really well off financially. We weren't the poorest family in the world, but we were definitely didn't have a lot of extras. And so we were just kind of forced. If we wanted something as kids, my parents just said, hey, you've got to go earn it. And so, I started off a little babysitting company. You get arrested for that now, right? I really remember having I would go around to my neighborhood at 9 years old and babysit probably 8-year-olds. I don't know how the hell old they were, but I can't believe people left their kids with me, but they did. And so that's where it started. And then from there, I realized you can kind of go hustle and pay for stuff, whether I wanted a new GI Joe collection or whether I got older and wanted my own car, and I just kind of progressed from there. And ultimately I've always been kind of a hustler and just going out and doing my own thing. I've worked for people. I've had 2 different jobs my whole life, and both of them were a total I'm 44 years old now. That was for a total of 3.5 years. And so just never really worked for anybody, and I started off a little bit by the time I hit high school and college, I had a roofing company, and that was sort of my first company with employees and stuff. And then I actually I played college basketball back in the day, and I had a full ride scholarship. And so at the time NCAA contacted me and said, hey, you can't have your roofing company. You can't make money as a college athlete if you're on a full ride scholarship. So if you want the company, you got to give up your scholarship. Well, at the time, I was like, hell with the company. I want to play basketball,
Right.
I don't know if that was a good decision or a bad decision. It was a lot of fun still at the time, but, and so I ended up selling that. And then right out of college, because I didn't have that to go back to, I did get a job, and I had a job for about 1.5 years, and ended up, I was always, do you ever remember, Jeff, back in the day, like watching late night TV, and you'd watch your, Carlton Sheets on TV, and,
Sure.
the late night infomercials, right? And I've always had this fascination for real estate. And that's really what started getting me into real estate, was in those early years. And I started off with I went to Barnes and Noble, bought a book, and had Carlton Sheets. And this book I bought, this guy was holding a seminar in Denver back in the day in 2000. So this was 21 years ago now. And I went to this seminar, did exactly what he said, went line for line through the book, and I bought a damn house. I put a house under contract. Let me back up. I didn't buy the house. I put a house under contract, and I didn't know what the hell to do. I had no money. I made $31,000 a year at my job, and it was a $600,000 house. There's no chance in hell I can buy this thing. And I ended up calling the guy back who ran the seminar and was like, hey, I went through the whole book. I can't figure out how to cancel the contract. I can't figure out how to get my money back to get out of this thing. And he's like, well, that's not the name of the game. You don't make any money canceling stuff. So I don't talk about that. And I'm like, well, then I screwed up, because I didn't think this one through, because I can't buy this damn thing.
Mhm.
And so he's like, tell me about the deal. And to his credit, he knew I couldn't buy it. He had just waited, but he actually said to me, he said, listen, that's a really good deal. You found a good one. So I know a guy that buys houses in that area. Let me call him. This, long story short, this guy drove by literally 2 hours later from my conversation. He drove by and it must've been a good deal. Cause he's like, hey, meet me at the bank. Would you sell me the contract for $19,000? And I'm like,
Right.
quit screwing with me, man. This is not, I'm in a pickle here. I don't have time for jokes. And the guy's like, no, man, I'm serious. I'll buy it from you for $19,000. I'm like, well, yeah, sure. Yeah, obviously, I make $31,000 a year. You think I'm going to say no to that?
Right.
So he writes me a check. I call Teresa up. I'm like, Teresa, we are rich. This guy, I mean, don't get excited yet. Cause it takes 3 or 4 days, the bank said, before they'll cash and get into our bank account. But let's just, don't say anything. Don't do anything different. Keep your same underwear on. Just keep running down the road and see if this thing cashes. And it ended up going through. And that was my introduction to real estate 20 years ago. And I quit my job 2 weeks later and we started running down the road full time since then. And so that was, and then we've gone ups and downs, all the way up to private jets at the airport to being bankrupt, a couple of years later. And it was a lot of learning.
So your very first real estate deal, I mean, basically you inadvertently ended up in wholesaling.
I wholesaled. Yep. Exactly. I wholesaled the deal. Yeah. My first deal was a wholesale deal. And then when I quit and we moved back, my career really, I figured out how to get financing, what to do. I figured out what I needed to do to get into the game. And for about 6 years straight, we did strictly fix and flip deals. So we would go and fix and flip properties in northern Utah, and my wife and I we would just hustle and find them and do it. And it started building to, for us, a nice little company. We were making somewhere close to $500,000 a year for us. I went from $31,000 to that. So I was pretty stoked. Right. I know guys do a lot better than that, but for us, we were like, man, this is really good. And then we had the opportunity to get into the really uber high-end resort properties, second home resort, private ski resort, private golf resort type properties. Started selling those properties to people. If I said their first names, you'd know who they were. We had private jets at the airport. We would go pick them up. We were living this crazy lifestyle for about 2.5 years. And it was really, really a lot of fun. I learned so much. And unfortunately, the guys that had the resort got indicted on securities charges and immediately got it shut down. And so it like literally shut down overnight. But we were making good money at the time, but we were also spending it as fast as we were making it. Right. I was, in my 20s, and we're hanging out with people that have lots of money, and we're trying to hang with them. And,
right.
And it was, and so it's not, when it literally ended, when I say we're making really good money at the time, but it was paycheck to paycheck good money. And when it ended. And then I just sat around for 6 months. And this is that point of, where you get to that point where you just have nowhere else to go. I poured myself had a little 6-month pity party where I just blamed everything and everyone around me. There was no way this was my fault. Right. And everywhere I looked, I was pointing fingers and making blame. And the bank has taken my house, and I'm pissed off at the bank. I'm like, how dare you take my house? And they're like, wait, I made your payment for 6 months. And I'm like, well, that's not my fault, that this. Right. And then finally, for whatever reason, you just get to a point where life bitch slaps you hard enough, and you're like, okay, maybe I have some responsibility here. Maybe I need to pick myself up off the ground and go do something. And that's when we really started rebuilding and kind of figuring things back out. And at the time I had a real estate license, and I just started hustling real estate and really just being a regular real estate agent for a few years to build up some capital. And then my wife and I had infertility issues, and we wanted to have family, but it was really, really expensive. At the time we had to do in vitro and ICSI, and it was cash. You didn't have any options as far as insurance. And in fact, I'm really embarrassed to say that at the time I was resorting to the fact of just not having kids. We were just barely making money. We were just barely getting our savings back up. And luckily I was married to a very determined woman. And we went through the process, and in May of 2011, we ended up having twins. And that's really, Jeff, where my story took a big turn, right? Because I was this selfish, you know, just this hustler that I didn't care about anybody or anything around me for the most part, right? It was all about me and what I wanted to do. And I was spending money and I was doing my thing. And when you have kids, I don't know, for me, it hit me really hard. It hit me to where you started to ask different questions. You started to wonder what everything was about, right? What, and it was, and at that point, I just really started questioning things. And that's when we really started building what we have now. And with a lot more purpose and with a lot more thought behind, okay, really, what do I want? And we went through our back against the wall. We started building things up. We ended up putting it back into having the kids. And we ended up building this family. And and that's when it evolved to where I'm at now of, I really started saying, okay, what do I like? What part of life, gets me going? Tony Robbins, have you ever heard Tony Robbins talk about the story with Robin Williams? And when he talks about Robin Williams, and he says, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And
Hmm.
and at that time, I had just heard that story, and that just would, I swear, every time I'd close my eyes, I'd hear this story in the back of my head. And there, at the exact same time, there was an ad campaign that the state of Idaho put on, and it was called 18 Summers. And they were running it in all these neighboring states, and we happen to live in Utah. So I'd see this ad campaign, and it was talking about, you have 18 summers to build memories with your kids, right? It was trying to get tourists up there. And those two things, I'll go to my deathbed and never forget vividly those commercials. And that's when, and then that talk where Tony Robbins gave. And I just really wanted to figure out something that we really, really enjoyed. Everything I had done before was always just, what can I make money doing? Right? What can I go do to make money? And I really loved, I have always loved real estate. I've been fascinated with real estate my whole life. And then I really loved the vacation side of life when we were doing the resort stuff,
Yeah.
because it represented the funnest of the fun, right? It was these amazing experiences, and spending times with the family and the people you love and your friends. And that's when I really started putting together what we do now. And we started doing it ourselves. And then ultimately it's grown into helping other people do it. And so that's kind of a long-winded answer, but just trying to take a really quick 30,000 foot view of where we ended up and how we got here.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's nothing to apologize for. It's a great story. And most importantly, it's your true story of how you got here. And I'm sure every person that heard it could hear elements of themselves in it. Certainly I could. One thing I have to ask is, you didn't happen to go through Utah Fertility Center, did you?
Yes, we did.
In Pleasant Grove?
Yes.
Was it Dr. Russell Folk at the time, back in
No,
2011?
no, it was not. It was, I should know the doctor's name. It was an Oriental doctor, and I can't remember his name, but it was an Oriental name.
Huh. Yeah. So I went through Utah Fertility Center as well, to
Oh,
have a baby in vitro in 2016.
oh, wow.
Oh,
So, all too well,
oh yeah.
it's a roller coaster, and it can,
She's our 6-figure miracle baby. Yeah. I mean,
right.
it's not
Yeah.
a small, undertaking.
No, it's not. And it's,
In 2 years, the whole process took us 2
yep,
years between, and
yep.
we had to use a surrogate too. We had to send the embryo off for genetic testing. I mean, 2 years, 6 figures, lawyers,
Yeah.
whole works.
Yeah. It takes its toll for sure. And it was, I was so, I mean, every day I'm so grateful that Teresa was, as determined as she was, because honestly, Jeff, I would have been the one to say, let's just do something different.
Yeah.
I still, again, these are things that I'm not proud of by any stretch, but I still remember being back, back then it was always just about me. Nothing ever hit me yet that there was something more than just me. And until that happened, and you're right. You get these miracle babies and you're like, man, this changes everything. It's, you don't take that stuff for granted anymore.
Yeah, that's so cool, man. So 2016, Stella is my girl. She was born. I had 3 kids before that had been my wife's kids that I married her and I adopted the kids.
Uh-huh.
And so they were my kids, but they were older. And this was the first time that I had like a baby that was on day one, here's your
Yeah.
baby, right? And it was like, man, I don't want to go back to work. And I had my own company. I had a digital agency, but even that digital agency, I kind of was like having to go into the office every day.
Yeah.
And that was the pivotal moment for me. I was like, I do not want to go back into an office every day because I have to. If I choose to, because there's a noble battle to fight, that's fine. But I don't want to have a company or a job that's something I got to feel like I got to clock into.
Yeah.
And I basically went home and I got obsessed with putting systems in place so that office could run without me. I went home. At first I went home for a month. Then I ended up staying home for a year. Then I ended up staying home for 2 years. And finally I said, we're selling the agency. I don't ever want to come back. And that really was the kind of the inflection point to doing what I do now, which, like you said, it's mission driven. It's about impact. It's about success and fulfillment.
Yes.
Something that my kids will be really proud of someday.
Yeah.
Same thing. It is crazy what kids,
It
especially
is.
to a man, like an
Yeah.
alpha, selfish, hustler man.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And it's not, there's some good things that we have, that there's a lot of good things that come out of that from us, right? That DNA, but then they change it and you have this softer side and it's just this protector type of a personality comes out, right? You want to just be this, not just this, you want this to be, I guess the best word is an example, right? You want them to look at you as like, I can't remember this meme I saw one time that, and it just always stuck with me as well. It's like, don't ever forget who's watching you. And it was a guy doing something with a little kid in the background paying attention. And it was just this, and it's so true, right? We just, those are the things that we care about. And when I listen to like your podcast and some of the, and these successful people that are on and talking about, there's so many similarities across the board, but there's one that's always like the biggest impacts are those people that they start to forget about the money part of it, right? We all want to make money, right? We all build our businesses. We have to make money and we grow these businesses and everybody talks about the 7 figures or the 8 figures or the exits and all this stuff. But what really drives us and the successful people that are doing it is it's the impact and it's the value we can bring. And we would do it whether we got paid or not, right? And that's the fun part about building a business, that's what we care about. I've never one time thought about an exit, and I know that might be taboo because so many people talk about building business for that exit or whatever else, but that's not why I do it. And it's not, like you say, it's not you had an agency that you could have built and you did exit, right? I mean, you had an exit, but that it didn't have that same fulfillment as what you're building right now because it might not have had that same impact, even though it helped people.
Yeah, it was great. We did a good job at providing what's fundamentally a commodity, although I would say it's a high quality commodity. It was digital marketing services for small businesses.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's 1,000 guys that can do that.
Yeah.
Now, I was pretty good at the infrastructure to scale it. That what made us good was that I was able to scale that business model bigger than a lot of solopreneur type of agency guys. But that didn't fundamentally change the experience for the client. That just meant that I could grow a bigger business and sell it for more money. But in terms of impact, does the world really need another agency? I don't,
It's fine. I mean, it's a service that's provided, but in your business now, I'm sure you've got people and that you can look at and you say, man, what I did and what I put together changed that person's life. Right.
Oh yeah. And ditto for you, I'm sure. I mean,
yeah. But that gets you going every day. Like, I don't think about coming to the office. I don't even think about it like the office. And I'm here, most days, all day, every day. And then but it's that impact and that when somebody looks at you and says, Shawn, you believed in me when other people wouldn't have believed in me. You helped me realize that this is a path that I could take. And it wasn't just for the uber wealthy. And it was a life changer for me. That's those stories. And it's like heroin for me, and
Yeah.
it's like, I would never get enough of it. So those guys that are like, oh yeah, whatever, if you were making all this money on real estate, you'd never teach it and you'd never
Yeah.
coach it. Like, yeah, well, you.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's so true. I haven't checked my Instagram in a few hours. And based on what I'm used to at this point, I'm pretty sure I could go pull it up. And I'm actually doing it right now.
Yeah.
If this is true. Yeah, I've got a new message from a guy that says, thanks a lot for what you do, Jeff. Just a quick one.
Yeah.
I've got another one that says, well, anyway, a bunch of people trying to sell me Instagram verification, but
yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like, you're right. I hear it every day now,
yeah.
And it is the best feeling in the world. So let's talk about it. And by the way, just so anybody knows, I said that I was going to, instead of, getting to know you off the show, I was like, oh, we'll just come on the show and we'll talk and we'll get to know each other. And because full disclosure, I have enough confidence in Shawn's business, largely because of the person that referred me to Shawn's business, to know like he's one of, if not the best at what he does when it comes to turnkey vacation rental investments. So like, I would say I'm a 9 out of 10 in terms of like I'm ready to go. Like you don't have to close me very hard. You just got to nudge me that one extra point. Hey, sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to let you know you can get a free copy of my book, The Millionaire Shortcut, which shows you the fastest way to become a millionaire in the new economy. And there's a special link just for this episode in the description. So thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. So for someone like me, I assume I would fit your avatar. Yes. I have a full-time business. I'm very busy. I have, good income and liquidity.
Yeah.
I have 4 kids. I love to travel. I have a business that I can work while I'm traveling. Yeah. I'm all about making memories. So, I live in Utah. I live in Southern Utah. So like, I'd rather go to California than Florida just because it's easier to get to.
Yep.
So like, yeah, where would I start? Where would a guy like me start in your universe?
Yeah. So we have a coaching program, right? We've got a course and a coaching program. It's a kind of a done with you system to where you invest in that. You've got the blueprint to follow. And we really start, Jeff, by just identifying. It's literally as simple. People are like, well, I got to find the best areas. Tell me where the best areas are. There are thousands of good areas. What you need to know is how to analyze an area, how to find good properties. So we literally start by saying, okay, let's define the property goals. Kind of that start with we begin with the end in mind. What do you want? What works for you in your family? What markets do you like? And then we really start to peel back the layers of the onion of, okay, now here's step 1 is checked off. Step 2, we have an 8-step process that we just literally go through because like you said, you don't have time to go figure this out yourself. There's so many moving parts that you'll just be like, heck with it, buy a house, I'll put it on Airbnb. And right now that works. And so check that box off because the markets are super, super hot, but ultimately markets shift, markets change. And these are long-term investments. So we take a little bit different approach to say, okay, let's make sure that they work now, but also that they're set up to work when things dip. And so we address all that through the process, but really the process doesn't get overly complicated because you don't have time for it to be overly complicated. And you're going to spend the majority of your time in that acquisition phase looking at properties. Most of the time online, I don't ever buy anything sight unseen. So you're going to go take a couple vacations and check them out when you narrow them down. But once the property is purchased and set up, they're turnkey, right? I look at my properties, I look at my calendar when I want to go use it, and I look at the statements at the end of the month. And so that's as involved as we are on the back end after everything's set up. And that's different than what most people will teach you to do because it's not quite as profitable on the front end.
Yeah. I can see that. So you're really you're not just teaching how to acquire a property that has good fundamentals, but on the management and the marketing side, you're really teaching how to kind of optimize the asset so that it has some sort of a unique appeal, a marketability that goes beyond just a location and a price on Airbnb.
100%. Yes, we do not. I mean, that's where the money is made. And here's the thing, and you'll understand this. And it's very a lot of this we just took from business. Like I always tell my wife, she's like, if I'm looking at porn, it's either going to be like business and marketing porn or real estate porn, right? That's my that's
Right.
my porn. And those are the two things that I look at and love. Well, in marketing, the only, like Dan Kennedy always says, there is no value in being the second low price leader. If you
Right.
can't make money being the lowest guy in the room, then don't be the second. You work at the top. And
Right.
so the only way you can work at the top is to deliver a unique experience. And the nice thing about vacation rentals versus other real estate assets is we have the ability to do that. You and I can own a lake house on the same lake, the same property, location properties being fairly similar. And one of us can make double the money the other guy can make by understanding how to deliver this unique experience, because people will pay for an experience. That's why they're going. People vacation for that reason. And it's not just about a nice house with nice furniture. And so we really talk about, okay, now how do we maximize the asset? And it's by paying attention to the details. And most people think you have to go this so far above and beyond what everybody else is doing, and you don't. To take that next step up, it's paying attention to a few things that most people think aren't worth it that absolutely will pay you in the long term.
Yeah, it's so true. I think we're inadvertently having a really great conversation about marketing where, because my business is different than your business. My business, I'm working with people that want to get into the business side. They don't want it done for them or even done with them. They want to learn how to do
Do
it,
it.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm teaching them about marketing and sales and creating offers and creating customer engagement and ultimately you've nailed it. It all is about creating an experience. And like you said, the experience is not all about polish and production and expense.
Yeah.
Like it's not about having the most expensive villa on the beach. It's actually much more human than that.
Yes.
And I would in my program, I have Entra as my educational company. We don't have the fanciest looking ads.
Yep.
We don't have the fanciest looking slides. Like I know companies that before they'll produce a course, they go hire a designer and pay them $5,000 to make all their slides look like they were done by, Matisse or Renoir or something.
Yeah.
My slides are just like, I do them myself on a Keynote. They look like crap.
Yeah.
But I'm obsessed with how people feel.
Yes.
When they come through my training, not even what they learn, how they feel.
Yes.
And that's why I think the gold standard in the market for entrepreneurial education. And that's what you're saying you can do with properties too.
It's 100%. It's what you can do across the board. And people need to pause and rewind and re-listen to that, because that is how you grow. That is how you build something. And like our training company, right? I have one, I don't even have a website up until today, because I was coming on your show and I was like, shit, somebody's going to look my website up. And all I literally for a year, I've had an opt-in page that looks like my 9-year-old put it together. And we've made well over 7 figures from that one opt-in page. Right. And the same as I do the same PowerPoints and everything else. But in fact, it's funny in my course, and on the very end, the last piece, I have people all the time call me and talk to me and say, hey, I own properties and I just want to, I want to learn your marketing side of it, your website and your paid traffic side of it. But I don't need the rest of it because I'm doing well. I'm fine. And what they don't realize is, and I always tell them, I said, what you're doing is you're taking whipped cream and putting it on a pile of shit, because even though you have a beautiful property, you have no experience. You haven't taken the time to figure out how you make your clients feel, how you make that guest feel when they come in. And my website and my marketing is not going to do you any good, right? The best marketing in the world doesn't do any good if the offer's no good. And
Right.
the offer has to be able to convert. We hear that all the time on the marketing side, but you know how offers convert because people because they work and people feel good about them, and they're like, okay, nobody cares whether you have a crappy PowerPoint if they're getting what they thought they were going to get from why they signed up, right? Or why they joined, or whatever that reason is, why they stayed at our house. We purposely make our property websites look, I would say, elementary is not the right word, but they're not the best looking property websites on purpose, because there are so many really good, high produced websites,
Yeah.
but we know exactly the customer experience we're looking to do. But we also want people to know there's this personal connection, and we want them to think, hey, which they're staying in my house. They're not staying in some big company's house. They're staying in my house, and I want them to enjoy it as much as I do. And that's the feeling we want them to have. And so, yeah, we take that concept through that setup phase to deliver the fairy tale. And the marketing is just marketing's marketing, right? We can get in front of people, but
Mhm.
if you can deliver this fairy tale, you can deliver this unique experience, you're never going to be out of business. You're never going to be hurting for business.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that. The word that we use internally is like it needs to look a little bit amateur.
Yes. Yeah.
Can't be too professional, and it's actually hard. This is a challenge you run into. I mean, and I don't think if everybody listening, if you only take one thing from this episode, and it's this whole notion of like, don't be too worried about being too professional because you might actually be doing more harm than good.
Yep.
Our challenge that we're having is my business is getting to the point, the scale where it's kind of like, it feels like a disconnect to not be more professional,
Yep.
but we're trying to figure out how to be more professional without hurting ourselves.
Yeah.
And that, like, we haven't cracked it yet. It's like, even, I mean, I go back and forth with ad managers on the content side, everybody that's responsible for putting our materials out to market. And we're constantly like, well, we screwed that up. Let's just go back to amateur, because like
Yeah.
conversions tanked when we made it look better. It's just
Yeah.
funny. And maybe it's probably always been an aspect of business. People, humans connect to humans and they want to feel human. But I feel like it's especially strong on the internet, where intrinsically trust is lower. So the
Yeah.
connection has to be higher.
Yeah. And I think you're exactly right. That connection is that you have to be able to connect, and you connect when people can relate, right? And that's why, like you say, it's got to be more amateur. We do that stuff on purpose, right? I get all these people like, oh, you don't even know how to put a calendar on your website and blah blah blah. I'm like, no, I know how to do that.
Right.
It doesn't convert as good, but the reason is because on the front end, when we really want to start that relationship, right, that customer experience starts from the very beginning, and how we communicate with those customers from our ads and everything else. Well, half of my ads, Jeff, are people like me holding my camera, and there's zero production value, and I screw it up, and a cop car goes in the background, and I use it, and I can't tell you how many of my clients are like, Shawn, we really, like, that's when we felt like we knew you. Like, we
Right.
feel like you're just this guy that's out there. And it's not that I'm trying not to be professional. I'm just not that polished.
Right.
And it almost works in our favor, even though we're really, really good at what we do. And they know that, right? We know what we're doing. We feel like we are the gold standard in what we do, like you said. But we don't take ourselves so serious. I looked at this guy's website recently and was talking, and he has this beautiful website. I mean, like, production quality, like story video, like it's like a movie on there, a
Right.
documentary about everything. And he told me the revenue he's making, and I'm like, holy crap, he's not making any money. He's literally making like $5,000 a month with his stuff. And I'm like, but I think he's trying, sometimes we have the tendency to try too hard, right? Instead of just saying, hey, listen, what I need to do is connect with people. What I need to do is relate to people. And like, to your point, you're to that point where I 100% understand exactly what you're saying is, you're big enough now. You're like, it can hurt you if it looks if it looks too professional and polished, because you know how to do that, you can get that done in 5 seconds. In fact, it's actually getting harder not to do that for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. And I mean, and, you know, this is a show about you, not about me, but I think it's a universal thing
It is. Yeah.
for businesses to understand that, like, your business will never be better or bigger than your humanity.
Yes.
Um,
100%.
and I think about the vacation rental, you know, my family, I think, I mean, we still go to hotels sometimes, Vegas in particular, we go to hotels because you can't do Airbnbs in Vegas.
Yeah.
Also just because we like we have a favorite hotel there. But like when we go to California, which we do pretty regularly, we always stay in Airbnbs now.
Yeah.
And we went up to a northern Utah one last year. And I think about the ones that really stick out. It's the ones where you go in and there's a little binder that says like, "Hi, we're the McNallys. Welcome to our little slice of heaven."
Yeah.
You know, and it tells the story about, like, we bought this 5 years ago. It was always a dream of ours to have a lake house, and we're so glad to share it with you. You know, help yourself to some of the ice cream in the freezer. We freshly stock it between every guest. Or like, there's always like these little, just really warm hearted things that those are the ones that you're like, oh, that's so sweet. And you feel good that you like connected with these people, even though they weren't there.
Yeah. And it's like in my world, the vacation rental world, right? We're teaching people that concept, and it's the exact same concept we do in every other business, right? These are universal principles of, now what drives our business is repeat customers and happy customers too, right? And so like we take that to a step further. An example of how we kind of deliver that fairy tale is we do the same thing. A letter to every one of our houses has a letter to the guest and tells them, you know, this is one of our favorite places, and here's, you know, we hope they enjoy it as much as we do. But we very much target down very specific niches, and we go after very specific target audiences, just like you would in any other business. And I've got a property up by Yellowstone, and I mean, Yellowstone's a huge draw, right? But it's also in the mecca of fly fishing area. There's like 5 blue ribbon fly fishing areas. Well, that's a small group of people, enough people that visit up there, but it's a small group. But we target that audience because I love to fly fish. And so we speak to that crowd. And so when they show up, they've got a letter from me. They've got a box of my favorite flies. They've got a handwritten map that I circle my favorite spots on the river. I point out where certain logs are, where certain rocks are, where they should go. And so we've got this, we take them through this entire itinerary, and we take the time to do that. And I just do 50 or 60 of them at a time, and then they're set out. So, but when they go, like, there's other beautiful properties on the same lake that we're on, and our property is a waitlist only property. And they're up because people are like, dude, I stayed there, and they feel like it's, you know, light years ahead of everybody else's experience. But really, how much extra time did it take me to point out the things that I loved and write out those notes and give them some of my favorite flies for them when they checked in? And I mean, all those little things just make a huge difference. And it's the same with any business. We just take that and apply that to our vacation rentals. And that's how you stand out in crowded markets.
So let me ask, I mean, for people who hear that and go, oh, that sounds like a lot of work. I mean, if you'll permit me to ask kind of a nosy question, how much time do you actually spend in a year creating those little welcome experiences just for that one property?
Yeah.
And if you'll permit me to ask, how much do you net, not gross, how much do you net per year from that one property?
Yeah. So that property nets this last year is about 115,000. And we probably, and I'll even go a higher number of hours that takes me to write those and get that put together. It's probably 5-10 hours, maybe at the most. I mean, it doesn't, not even 5 hours. I mean, here's the thing, Jeff, a profitable property, people think we have thousands of people through it in a year. You're going to have a really profitable property is going to have one person checking in a week, right? And so there's 52 weeks in a year. So I have to write 52 handwritten notes. I have to have 52 fly boxes put together. It's not that time consuming.
And you could probably hire somebody to do that if you wanted to save $5,000 or something.
Yes. Yeah. It's not like, it doesn't take you that much time to do that. And then we don't deliver them. We put them in an
Right.
owner's closet, and the management company and the cleaners, they set them out every time. And so we just have to put them together. We have to, come up with the experience, and they help us deliver it.
Right. So anyway, you illustrated my point. 5 to 10 hours a year to make $115,000 net. I mean,
Yeah.
what's that? $11,000 to $22,000 an hour.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll take the time to do that.
Well, yeah, I think most people would take that. Well, Shawn, thank you for coming on the show. I wish we had more time. Although fortunately for me, you and I are going to have more time talking more about this because
Awesome.
I'm super interested, even more than I was.
Yeah.
All right. I'll do some extra work for $11,000 an hour.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
And by the way, you do that extra work when you're up there with your family hanging out.
Yeah, exactly. Because also I love to fly fish, and my dad lives in Bozeman, not too far from Yellowstone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
hopefully there's one for sale on that same lake. But no, seriously, this has been so enlightening, really. I'm sure that we've piqued a lot of people's interest. Where can people go to learn more about this or just about you?
Yeah. Go to vodacy.com. Again, we just put this together just for you guys. So,
And it's not too professional because
no, it's not. Some of the links might not work yet. So no, we've got, it's got a story about us. I've got an about us story, on there. We've got our free training that they can go watch. We've got links to our social media pages so they can go kind of follow us and find us. So just go to vodacy.com. You spell it VODYSSEY.
if you loved that episode, then you're definitely going to love this one. Check it out.
I actually took action, and this action wasn't hustling action. It was personal development action. And my life started to shift and change.